blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Janice Marie Hunt, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Sunday, February 22nd, 2026 issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Spring Preview. Two elder statesmen of the dance floor. Andre DeShields, the Baltimore-raised theater veteran, has had some wild experiences during his decades-long career. And yet, he was still caught off guard by a specific interjection from an audience member during the off-Broadway run of Cats. The Jellicoe Ball, a reimaging of Andrew Lloyd Webber's classic musical as a ballroom competition. When I heard it the first time, DeShields said, I thought, who's calling me a bitch? Do I have to go to Baltimore on them? Where's my knife? Then recalling how he was about halfway down the set's runway, someone stands up in the audience with the fan with the unmistakable talent and tenure of ballroom. Bitch, you ate that. It occurred to me I just received a compliment. Oh my. One of the highest. At that moment, I thought, this is your cotillion into ballroom. As old Deuteronomy, the Jellicoe Ball patriarch, DeShields presided over the highly competitive, dance-heavy annual gathering of cats, deciding who would go to the Heavenside layer, a kind of afterlife. And now he is preparing for the Broadway transfer of the Zion Livingston and Bill Roach production, which begins previews on March 18th at the Broadhurst Theater. DeShields 80, who won a Tony for playing Hermes in Hadestown, is not the only revered icon returning to watch over those rough and tumble kittens. Junior LaBeija, 68, the ballroom veteran and memorable MC whose dagger-sharp repertoire was captured in the 1991 documentary Paris is Burning, will be back as Gus the Theater Cat. It will be his Broadway debut. In the New York Times review of the show's 2024 staging at the Perelman Arts Center, Jesse Green described LaBeija's Gus as a catty old queen who can still throw ample shade. DeShields, he wrote, as an usurper shade, ability to freeze attention on stage. The show's younger casts have benefited from their experience and mere presence. Robert Mason, known as Silk, who plays magical Mr. Mistletoe and uses they/them pronouns, said they were struck by DeShields and LaBeija's ability to share who they are as Black queer men in this world, being able to continue following their dreams at their age and knowing that this is where Black excellence can get to. It was particularly moving, Mason 26 said, to receive DeShields' invitation to walk with him in the Village Halloween parade in 2024. Being able to be in the space with them, it really opened my eyes up to where I can go and the things that I can continue to achieve. On a recent wintry afternoon, DeShields and LaBeija met up in Midtown Manhattan at the tiny AMT Theater. Its manager is a friend of DeShields for a spirited chat about elder cats connecting on the runway and what it means to mentor younger generations of artists. They even took a trip all the way back to the mid 1970s when LaBeija tried to see DeShields and Stephanie Mills in The Wiz. These are edited excerpts from the conversation. Had you two met before doing Cats, the Jellicoe Ball off Broadway? Andre DeShields, no. Although I had seen Paris is Burning, so I was aware of the constellation that he is. Junior LaBeija, when Andre was on Broadway those many years ago, I could not afford to see him and Stephanie. Me and my ballroom girlfriend would go to the theater and wait until they would open the door to hear their voices. I was drawn to drama theatrically, but I never wanted to be an entertainer. I abhorred it. It was horrible to me. I was never going to be a Stephen Fetchit or a Dorothy Dandridge or a Hattie McDaniel to tap dance in front of audiences. And look where the universe sent me. DeShields, right where you needed to be. LaBeija, he is the reason that I stayed in the show, period. When you meet greatness, you want to preserve it for others. I would always say, Andre, why is you not Madame Tussauds Wax Museum? DeShields, that's one of the reasons it's so important that Cats, the Jellicoe Ball, is about to debut on Broadway now. I see it as an intersection of history and evolution. I know we in the arts are not supposed to be political, but I just want to mention that this would not have been happening now if it were not for our current political administration. We, meaning all the aspects of the American society, had not matured to the point that we could let go of the quintessential tradition and embrace the quintessential oddity. And we were still underground of the Jellicoe Ball, we who have been shunted to the margins of society for most of our lives. But it didn't stop us from creating great, lasting art. It took everyone else a lifetime to recognize it, to realize it, and to want it. That's all. How do you conceive the relationship between Old Deuteronomy and Gus? Well, one day, I went to rehearsal early because I wanted to make this good impression. I don't want to be a ballroom diva and all that. So I sat outside and heard Grisabella singing Memory. When I got in tune with the words, it correlated with what I wanted to transcend as Gus. I wanted the audience to understand that I loved Deuteronomy. And when I saw him and I bowed down and paid homage, I made it clear to him subliminally, I will accept you picking her because I have decided to stay old and die with you. I don't know if you remember this particular moment in Act 2, when Gus, the theater cat, is in the center of the runway. I'm at the end of the runway in my throne. And this is after I have said to him to sing it again. There was a frequency originating with Gus that traveled directly to me. And while he was performing his tour, The Force, you have the younger version of him on stage, which is what I am remembering. The blush of our youth when we were in love. It was never rehearsed. No one knew about it until it happened. You both have been underground performers, each in your own right. We are, if you will, typecast in a very intelligent way. We are the elders. We are the longest living. We are the most experienced. The only moment of true privacy is between Gus and Deuteronomy. What did you share with the younger cast members? I was only a source of information for letting everyone know to be free. Be authentically who you are as an artist. You're not an entertainer, you're an artist. I merely represented that I'm here. I learned how to do it from ballroom. You're in theater. You know how to do it, but it's called theatrical and dramaturgy. All those terms that I learned. Now, I did help there, not by holding a class, but by sharing what I know, just putting it out there. If you want it, it's free. The strength of your character is in how still you can be. You've both talked about the idea of being supportive and not judging others, but isn't there a whole lot of judging in ballroom? You are judging from a point of view that is unconditional love. There's nothing wrong with judging. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, as long as you are not projecting your insecurities into that opinion and onto the person of whom you are speaking. I like that. There are different bands or groups that all humans go to where they feel comfortable or safe. Ballroom was a charm school for you to learn how to refine the art when you go out into the mainstream. For anybody that sees Cats, the Jellicoe Ball, pick up the family values that we display. Entrances are very important in this production. What's the secret to a good one? If you are not ready, if you haven't stayed in each moment, it's not going to seem authentic. If you have to take a breath, the nail cycling before you enter, it shows that you're not confident. Not so much about what you're doing, but about who you are. In theater, he is unapologetic and unbothered. In ballroom, I am unapologetic and unbothered. Together in theater, I have learned Black excellence. It's not a feeling, it's reality. This play has shown Black excellence. One night I said, Andre, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to gather with friends, and I'm going to have champagne and caviar with my family. Excellent. I'll put it in the back pocket. Billy Idol, dancing with himself. Billy Idol has lived in the same gated compound in the Hollywood Hills since 1987. Late in his heyday as a chart-topping star of MTV's debut generation. It is a large, complete with stone facade buildings, expansive valley views, and a waterfall. The previous owner was a soft porn guy, Idol said. Mainly, they were using this house to film things. He discovered this because he later inadvertently screened them. I would suddenly see people in the garden, he recalled. I'd be watching something going, wait a minute, that's my house. He didn't mind the X-rated shenanigans, quite the contrary. Into the spirit, we carried it on, he said with a raspy chuckle. This was minute 3 of my introduction to Idol, the razor blonde British singer with the everlasting sneer, whose anthemic power chord hits Rebel Yell, White Wedding, Dancing with Myself, and swaggering attitude made him the bad boy of the 80s rock. Idol, now 70, has revealed just how bad in a best-selling memoir and an upcoming documentary, Billy Idol Should Be Dead. The film, directed by Jonas Åkerlund, opens on him composing an introspective song on guitar. In '84, I OD'd on my kitchen floor, woke up and had some more. Sex, debauchery, addiction, aggression, soft core, it wasn't. But as he nears a half century in the music business, Idol, who got his start in the rolling London punk scene in the 70s, is clear-eyed about his cultural place. He is one of the last remaining strands connecting that raw DIY energy to the glam era and the mainstream. And the rockers who followed in his leather clad wake are eagerly paying their due. At a talk in Los Angeles late last year, Dave Grohl genuflected directly to him about the ultimate badassery of you and your amazing band. One thing that I love so much is seeing generations of people singing every word to every one of your songs, Grohl said, adding that at one festival gig, you absolutely just wiped the stage. Idol raised his arms in victory. The whole stadium was mushering. He responded proudly. Just this writhing mass of people going crazy to Moni Moni, his number one cover hit from 1987, nearly 40 years after his debut at Madison Square Garden. Idol returned last summer promoting his reflective 2025 album, Dream Into It, with his biggest tour ever, one of the largest stretches between headlining performances in the arena's history. None of this was preordained, of course, and a lasting career seemed mighty unlikely in the decades when Idol was snorting heroin and riding motorcycles too fast. I'm super lucky, he said. Somehow his appetite for risk fused with his tenacity in just the right measure. I really wanted this artistic life where I was in love with what I did. Idol's bristling charisma and shirtless fist pumping antics may have been what the casual fan responded to. His studly frontman aura was undeniable from his earliest days, especially once a hairstyling snafu resulted in his signature bleach look. But as his 2014 autobiography, Dancing with Myself, and the documentary opening in wide release Thursday highlight, his songwriting was a deeply considered as his style, and it was honed among the giants of punk rock, new wave, and pop. He cribbled the title Rebel Yell from the bourbon that he once saw the Rolling Stones swinging at Ronnie Wood's New York apartment. He knew everyone and built on influences that influenced the minimalists, duo, Suicide, Russian constructivists, Art, and Elvis Presley's lip curl. From their first meeting in 1981, said Steve Stevens, his longtime guitarist, he had a definite vision of what he was looking to do. He didn't ascend into rock star posture, he was already there. As his deceptively simple hits, many written with Stevens, a virtuous shredder, have withstood decades still beloved. Eyes Without a Face, his 1984 jagged ballad, has lately surged on streaming and social media, and still adaptable. Maren Morris, the country star, gave Dancing with Myself a dreamy twist in a 2024 cover which Idol approved. The original structure is so memorable, she said. He's a legend. One sunny winter afternoon, Idol, in a Sun Records t-shirt and his customary proudage of silver jewelry, was sunk into a red club chair in his living room. As a counterpoint to LA's sleek topsness, he had decorated the space years ago in overstuffed British pub style, reds and blacks, lion-crested wallpaper, fluidiless brocades. It was very lived in, with mementos and photos of his 3 children and grandkids. Legal pads lay stacked by the couch. His book notes and Civil War era weaponry hung near the ceiling. Idol is a lifelong history buff, especially the battlefield stuff. He has probably watched more American Westerns than anybody I know, Stevens said, noting that Ozzy Osbourne, whom he and Idol helped induct into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, shared those History Channel and Americana interests. School was otherwise not Idol's strong suit. I have an ADD problem, which people didn't know about in the 60s, he said, but music captivated him fully. In our conversation, he lit up talking about his inspiration and the way he folded all those sounds, the crooners of the 50s. Yeah, he said. Peter, he's the crooners of the 50s and 60s. The reggae he heard in London record shops, the electronics of Kraftwerk were the dance beats of Giorgio Moroder via Donna Summer and to his punk roots. Dancing with Myself is the same speed as Blitzkrieg Bop. You'd never think about that, but it is, he said, delightfully singing the guitar line of that Ramones classic. His first proper band, Generation X, opened for them in 1977. The solidly middle-class son of a British businessman and his Irish nurse, he was born William Broad in England, but always felt a bit American. His earliest memories are from when his father's job took them to Long Island, and he listened to his mother's big band and jazz records along with musicals. I learned a lot from Richard Burton during Camelot because he spoke, sang, Idol said, rearranging big elastic features for a surprisingly good Burton as King Arthur impression. That lip curl, he comes by it naturally, but he added the dose of Sid voracious snarl. Back in the London suburbs, he picked up drums and guitar. Seduced by the dissatisfaction of the punk scene, as a teen, he traveled in a pack with pals like Suez Sikhs of the Bashees in sliced up t-shirts, leather pants, and military waistcoats, hanging out at a lesbian club. The only place their style wasn't an invitation for a fight. At 20, in 1976, he first saw Sex Pistols and Generation X open for The Clash on New Year's Eve. His stage name came from subverting a report card admonishment, William is Idol. As a musician, though, he was anything but, helping open a Covent Garden club, the Roxy, with some compatriots as their fan base grew. We were one of the few punk bands to have females in our audience, he noted in the book. Sex appeal was always a spark. When he played Wembley Arena in 1990, he had ballrooms with condoms affixed to them dropping from the ceiling. Arriving in the studio hung over one morning after a night with a girl or a bird in his parlays, he and his Generation X songwriter and bassist Tony James produced Dancing with Myself. Inspired by a club goer they once spotted in Tokyo, grooving with his reflection in a mirror. By the time Idol returned to the U.S. to try to make it as a solo artist in 1981, you couldn't go to a club and not hear it, Stevens said. One night when Idol was at a crowded West Side spot, the bar suddenly cleared, the DJ had played the song, and everyone dashed for the dance floor. I know who Billy Idol is. In that moment, he recalled thinking, this is what I wanted to do. From then on, he tested all his freshly written tracks in clubs. White Wedding with a thumping guitar sound Stevens said was inspired by Martin Rev's electric organ, and Suicide had his debut at what is now the Viper Room on the Sunset Strip. By that point, Idol had formed lasting artistic connections on both coasts. We met in 78, said Joan Jett, who opened for Idol at the Garden last year. I lived across the street from the Whiskey A Go Go in LA. He came over and hung out. His fledgling band played Max Kansas City, the legendary New York art punk hangout, for its closing night showcase in 1981 in DIY style. We got up unannounced, Stephen said, so that afternoon in our crummy little rehearsal place, Billy brought in white t-shirts and fluorescent paint so we'd look like we belonged together. Idol made every inch of the 80s scene, joining Blondie at the Mud Club, catching Grandmaster Flash in the East Village, giving an already confident Madonna a ride, absorbing all the references. He writes in the book about a memorable Prince gig. He was wearing a raincoat with thigh-high socks and a jockstrap that squirted water during his guitar solos. Soon enough, the advent of MTV, which launched the same month Idol started recording his solo album, made him globally famous, and his long months on the road were as wild and womanizing as you expect. A few years ago, through a series of 23andMe tests, he discovered he had a son, Brent Broad, in this period. But the drug habit Idol had developed eventually began to disintegrate his success. He was a heroin and more user throughout the 80s, holding up along in his dark apartment for days, hallucinating. A split with Perry Lister, a British dancer and choreographer who was his longtime girlfriend and muse, drove him further into despair. They later reconciled and had a son, William Wolf Broad. Working through withdrawal symptoms made him so erratic and aggressive. His collaborators nicknamed him Zool. For his first interview with Rolling Stone, he drank several bottles of red wine and went on a tear to the reporter, E. Jean Carroll, about how much he hated Rolling Stone, which was not true. As he put it, I had it all, and I lit it with butane. He also kept the scale of his addiction hidden, and in those pre-internet days, dangerous escapades like the time he was ushered out of the Bangkok on a gurney by the Thai military never made the press. I learned a lot watching the documentary, Stevens said. A serious motorcycle accident that almost cost Idol his leg in 1990 changed the course of his career. He had to turn down a part in The Terminator because it involved too much running. The move to Los Angeles and parenthood, he also has a daughter, Bonnie Blue Broad, from another relationship, helped him tame his ways. There was a voice telling me, "You can't do this forever," he said. These days, Idol, who is currently single after a long relationship with the model and TV host China Chow, is a near teetotaler 2 years ago. On the advice of his doctor, he even gave up alcohol and devoted fitness buff. The documentary and his last album helped him take stock of things, but then he has always minded his own life. White Wedding, which he drafted alone in 20 minutes, was inspired by his sister's nuptials. He gave them more sinister spin, and of course, a million people got married to it, he said, laughing. The song does contain some of his most vital lyrics, he said. Speak, singing himself into it. Start again. You can restart your life. If you think it's over, start again. Articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Trying to assign value to his roles. The actor Gabriel Basso had been at the American Museum of Natural History for an hour or so when he turned the conversation to ancient geopolymers. He then skipped to sonar jamming moths. Phoenix's trading ships, the etymology of amethyst, impossible architecture, and the prospect of dinosaurs learning to parrot human language. That would be actually terrifying, he said. Basil 31 is the star of The Night Agent, one of Netflix's most watched shows. It returned this month for its third season. Basil plays Peter Sutherland, a maverick FBI agent keen to unravel a government conspiracy. On screen, his typical effect is either angry, eyes narrowed, square jaw clenched, or like a guy shaking off a sucker punch. But on this February afternoon, he was a picture of enthusiasm. Confronted with a model of the Titanosaur, the museum's largest dinosaur, he grinned. Sick, he said. Then he mused about its skeletal structure. Boyish and macho, voluble and guarded, Basil wandered the museum mostly incognito and obviously enchanted. About his acting career, he is more oblivious. It feels like one of those things that shouldn't be a life obsession, he said as he observed the painted dioramas. Like, your life should never revolve around it completely because it's not real. Growing up in Missouri, Basil was, he said, most comfortable in nature, wandering the woods near his house, collecting snakes for a terrarium. When his sisters moved to Los Angeles with their mother to pursue acting careers, Basil initially stayed home with his father. But during a visit to Los Angeles, he found an agent and he soon began working, appearing as a teen in shows like The Big C and films like Super 8. Always on set, he missed prom, he missed homecoming, he nearly missed his graduation. It was sort of a tough environment to figure out who you are as a person, he said, settling on a bench near the prehistoric mammals. In 2016, as he was aging out of teen roles, he moved back to Missouri and began playing in a punk band. He hoped the experience would ground him. It didn't. I wasn't living great, he said. So when a friend suggested that we meet with an agent, he took the meeting, which led to a starring role as J.D. Vance in Hillbilly Elegy, the 2020 film adaptation of Vance's book, and then a few years later to The Night Agent. Sean Ryan, who created the show, wasn't initially persuaded. In Basil's audition tape, he wore a full beard, which didn't jibe with Ryan's clean-cut version of Peter, an FBI newbie relegated to receptionist duties. But a cast director persuaded Ryan to call Basil back, and Ryan's opinion changed. I was looking for somebody who felt inherently good, somebody who felt a little like an underdog, Ryan said. Basil had that. Though Basil was drawn to the action sequences and the espionage trappings, Peter's moral certainty was the real attraction. Anyone who's worth emulating, anyone who's done anything historically has that level of conviction and values, Basil said. Even if they go down in history as a villain, they had something they were pursuing. Basil doesn't necessarily endorse Peter's choices. Peter is not me, he said. He's not a hero. He's dancing on the line of will to power, but he enjoys playing someone staunch in his belief in his own rightness. Peter's willing to die for, he said. It's cool reading those lines where I'm like, yeah, he is. Peter's politics are opaque, and Basil is circumspect about his own. I don't get to pick who my fans are, so the last thing I'm going to do is moralize or politicize, he said. While he shares the show's conspiratorial mindset, his preferred conspiracies are historical. He mentioned theories about the Lusitania and the Titanic, and thinks there would be less conspiracy if there were more accountability. I know people lie. I know people with power lie. And there's a system that you can't hold accountable, he said. So within that trifecta of evil, you're going to have people that do stuff and get away with it. To play Peter, Bezos set out to acquire an FBI agent's expertise and then some learning evasive driving and weapons handling. He also continued his mixed martial arts training, boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling. In my head, it's how much of myself can I bring where I'm acting and I can make this real, he said. In season 3, which concerns dark money and campaign finance, Bezos was allowed to do more of his own driving. Fight scenes are plentiful. These scenes entail risk, and Bezos believes in taking them. You can't be paid a lot of money and eat really good food and stay in really nice places and have people take care of you and be sheltered, he said. He believes that if a movie or a show is going to ask for hours of viewers' time, it is incumbent on actors to give it their all. Was his personal safety a concern? No, he said, because I don't think that's legitimate. Admittedly, much of acting feels illegitimate to Bezos. I don't think that people should make their life revolve around emotion, hysteria, subjectivity, he said. What should a life revolve around? Bezos listed a few core values: humility, objectivity, accountability, law, being of service. To him, stories have a value, but only if they feel real and have real world implications. Some of the greatest warriors in history had a narrative that motivated them. Like, what would Achilles do, he said. Stunts and fight scenes, however faked, are a way to justify a vocation he can't entirely defend, bringing fiction closer to physical fact. Twice that afternoon, Bezos referred to the entertainment industry's idolized masculine past. The guys who built this business had all been to the war, he said, a past that he seemed to long for. Ryan said, I don't think he's interested in cashing in on this. He's somebody who his real values that he wants to adhere to, and he doesn't want Hollywood to change him. Bezos recently wrote and directed his first film, Iconoclast, about a man, Bezos, who develops a dangerous obsession with an influencer. He enjoyed the process, but he isn't sure how long he will stay in the business, in any role. He believes that a real-life maverick like Peter would have been killed off by the Bureau or politicians before it long ago. If it happens in The Night Agent, Bezos won't regret it. I have a feeling I'm going to take a break soon, he said. He has interests beyond Hollywood in art, masonry, music, martial arts, nature, and he wouldn't mind some time to pursue them, especially now that he has left behind what he described as the corruptive forces of youth, sitting on the museum's 4th floor with much of prehistory arrayed before him. He seems certain of his own history and of his future. I now know a lot of things about myself, he said. I feel confident in my ability to go somewhere and not lose course. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Art and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Nurturing talent with a keen eye. As a girl growing up in the Watts section of Los Angeles in the 1950s and 60s, Eileen Harris had no reason to imagine ever being rich. Even when, in 1983, she married a computer programmer named Peter Norton and moved into his apartment in Venice, within glimpsing distance of the Pacific Ocean, life was far from prosperous. By the end of that decade, however, the Nortons sold their business to Symantec Corporation, the cybersecurity company, for stock worth about $70 million, and neither needed to work ever again. They did need, by passion, to surround themselves with art. An early interest grew into a life-defining vocation, and the Nortons accumulated one of the most significant collections of contemporary art in Los Angeles, numbering at its peak about 2,500 works. They separated in 2000 and later divorced. Eileen Harris Norton still collects, and her support for curatorial scholarship and social justice causes has been just as consequential. A few months ago, at a dinner at Hauser and Wirth, Los Angeles, the gallery's co-owner, Manula Wirth, complimented Harris Norton on half a century of collecting. Harris Norton was taken aback, never having considered the anniversary. Wirth and her husband, Ian Wirth, proposed a non-selling exhibition of highlights from the collection, which opens Tuesday at the gallery's downtown space, coinciding with Fritz Los Angeles, Thursday to Sunday. True visionaries like Eileen are increasingly rare, Manula Wirth wrote in an email. Eileen has always understood that a vibrant cultural ecosystem depends on nurturing talent. On a recent balmy morning in Santa Monica, Harris Norton, 73, dressed in a loose slacks and a floral blouse, answered the front door of her 1906 Craftsman home, described by her longtime friend Darren Walker, president of the National Gallery of Art in Washington, as a deeply private person who is not interested in the limelight or attention. Harris Norton seemed demure but jolly. She was joined by Ingrid Scheffner, Hauser, and Wirth's curatorial senior director, the steward of this exhibition. In the front hall hangs a modest black and white photograph from 1966 showing a junk art sculpture by Debbie Brewer in front of Watts Towers. The photographer, Harry Drinkwater, documented the sculpture as part of the new celebrated exhibition, 66 Signs of Neon, organized by Noah Purfoy in the wake of the 1965 Watts Rebellion. Harris Norton had lived through the rebellion. It was happening around us, she recalled, but at 14, she knew nothing about the exhibition. It wasn't until the 1980s that she encountered and began collecting the work of Black artists like Purfoy, David Hammons, Bertrand Sarr, and John Arterbridge, who used the detritus of the rebellion to make scorching, politically inflected assemblage art. It just shows that you can live in a place and not really know this was happening, she said. On the wall at the top of her staircase hangs a small sculpture by Arterbridge, a miniature shopping cart packed with scraps of colored fabric and sewn canvas sacks. Harris Norton's family was comfortably middle class and rather conservative, she said. As only child, she lived with her mother, who worked in a nearby thrifty pharmacy until it was destroyed in the riots, and with her grandfather and two maternal uncles who had post office jobs but who nurtured artistic proclivities. One was an accomplished chef who loved opera and theater, and the other was an aspiring writer interested in dance. You just got dragged along, Harris Norton recalled. The family would attend the Philharmonic, the opera, and art museums. She remembers being taken to meet the dancer Almond Ailey. Growing up Black, you saw Black excellence. You saw Black dancers. You saw Black singers, and you wanted to go there. When in 1976, As a newly graduated elementary school teacher, she wandered with her mother into a printmaking demonstration in the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall by the African American artist Ruth Waddy. Her mother goaded her into buying a print. Exhorters from 1976 still hangs in a upstairs bedroom depicting in black little coat a lively group of figures with open mouths and upraised arms. The modest, spontaneous purchase laid a foundation for everything that followed. Wow. Meeting artists has always been important to her. Eileen would much rather go to a studio than a gallery, Schaffner said. Harris Norton added, "You get a sense of the person." Beth Starr told me that she remembered first bumping into Harris Norton during art walks in Venice in the mid-'80s. Harris Norton acquired an assemblage by Starr soon after and has continued to collect her work, as well as pieces by her daughters Leslie and Allison. She's very specific about what she likes and what she doesn't like, and I appreciate that, Starr said. It was in 2000 that Harris Norton met the artist Mark Bradford, then only 3 years out of college and an emerging talent. Bradford's work had caught the eye of Thelma Golden, the recently appointed deputy director of exhibitions at the Studio Museum in Harlem, who was putting together Freestyle, the first of a series of pioneering group shows. Golden made an introduction, and Harris Norton drove down to his studio in Lampert Park. Bradford's paintings impressed her. "I've never seen anyone use hairstyling in papers to make a painting," and she bought a couple. "Then he told me about my hair," she said. "He said, 'Your hair is not cute.'" The curators Harris Norton was traveling with later told her the air went out of the room, she recalled. Bradford worked in his mother's hair salon. Harris Norton asked if he thought he could do better. He said he could. "So I started going to the beauty shop," Harris Norton said. "I guess we bonded over him doing my hair." In 2014, with Bradford and his partner Alan DeCastro, Harris Norton founded the nonprofit Art Plus Practice in Leimert Park, where the hair salon, later Bradford Studio, had been. The nonprofit is a free art center and hub supporting the needs of local foster youth. Bradford wrote in an email that his idea for Art Plus Practice was about bringing the mountain to the people, not the people to the mountain. As a patron, Eileen built a whole new mountain and somehow got everyone to come climb up it. Golden has long been a friend and ally to Harris Norton. In 1994, the Nortons underwrote a large part of Golden's exhibition, Black Male, at the Whitney Museum of American Art. The show, featuring work by artists of various ethnicities that examined representations of Black masculinity, was controversial, especially for a senior generation of Black artists. When it traveled to the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles the following year, the Nortons hosted a presentation by Golden about the exhibition, allowing her to head off some of the criticism from members of the local art community in advance of the show's opening. "She is someone who's really in a very significant way paved a way for me," Golden said. "It was an ongoing conversation of shared interests, shared passions. She really existed as a connector, but also a collaborator." The Nortons' enduring support of curators, as well as artists in extraordinary. In 1989, they established a grant program to fund curators' research and travel, and later a series of curatorial workshops. As the art historian Kelly Jones noted, discretionary grants to museum curators of contemporary art such as herself provided funds to purchase works or suggest works to the acquisitions committee that might not be championed at the time. Among the young black artists that commanded Harris Norton's attention were Lorna Simpson, Glenn Ligon, Gary Simmons, and Kerry James Marshall. It's a 1990 painting by Marshall that gives the Hustler and Worth show its title, Destiny is a Rose. In the 1990s, she bought difficult work by Charles Gaines. The artist told me principally because many young artists she respected had been his students and spoke highly of him. She later underwrote production of Gaines' work for the 2007 Venice Biennale, and in 2020 funded the Charles Gaines Faculty Chair at Cal Arts in support of more diverse representation. It's authentic support, Gaines said. A tour of Harris Norton's home reveals plenty of work by artists who did not go on to be blue chip superstars, and by no means is all the work in her collection by black or female or Anglo artists. Pieces by Fred Tomaselli, Tashigi Marmaki, and Lawrence Weiner are featured prominently on her walls. Some commentators, especially in the 1990s, snidely accused the Nortons of not having taste. Today, the collector's high-low pluralism is beguiling and distinguishes it from so many unimaginable collections that showcase trophy pieces by a narrow cadre of in vogue artists represented by the Big Five galleries. We didn't have a checklist, Harris Norton said, her eyes widened disapprovingly. We knew people who had a checklist. Her collection is backed up by abundant evidence of art by social connection, by care for a local community, and by personal history. A lenticular print, which changes when seen from different angles, by Miriam Wask, hangs in Harris Norton's kitchen. The artist was previously unknown to me, but she was a friend and neighbor of Harris Norton's until her death in 2008. Nearby, above the breakfast table, is a 1968 painting by Alma Thomas, the revered African-American abstractionist whose work is in the collection of most major museums across the country. Harris Norton does not claim foresight for her trailblazing investments. Who knew is a favorite explanation. Who knew that Simmons, Sarr, Bradford, and so many others would turn out to be such important figures? Who knew that the art world for this school teacher from Watts will become a place to share her commitment to learning and discovery? You could look at Eileen's collection history and say she's prescient, Bradford said, but it's taste and it's a fight. Eileen has a history of packing works because they mean something to her, not because they mean something to the market. Current films. An all-time of a film, an epic of breathtaking visual splendor containing all the wondrous layers of an entire life. Train Dreams brings all the visual power of a Terrence Malick film to its corner of the Pacific Northwest. Cinematographer Adolph Velsel creates one captivating composition after another. Train Dreams is about the big picture of existence itself and finding our place in it, the small moments of life that accumulate into the immensity of all we are. Train Dreams, now back in select theaters. Two strangers carry a cake across New York. USA Today, Theater Mania, Entertainment, New York Theater Guide, Best of the Year. An iridescent new musical comedy delivers lavishly on laughter, escape, and fantasy. A thoroughly beguiling ode to the Big Apple. Two strangers carry a cake across New York, a new musical comedy now on Broadway. Broadway's Euphoric Celebration, a pop rock avalanche. Six Totally Rules, winner of 26 awards. Six, the musical. Give a royal welcome to a new Broadway queens. Classic comedy Uncorked. Fallen Angels. Rose Byrne and Kelly O'Hara on Broadway March 27th through June 7th. Romeo and Juliet Suite, New York premiere, March 2nd through March 21st. Startling, dazzling, and wrenching in equal measure. The dance scenes were not only dazzling to the eyes, but also wrenchingly expressive. The New Yorker. A completely transformative performance. Not something, someone. Frankenstein. A film by Guillermo del Toro. 9 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Adaptive Screenplay, Costume Design, Production Design, Makeup and Hairstyling. 8 BAFTA Award nominations, 3 Actor Award nominations, including Best Supporting Actor. Jacob Elordi's performance feels something close to otherworldly. He has the risk willingness of Marlon Brando, but the softness and vulnerability of pre-accident Montgomery Clift. He suffers Gallimatory fabulous visual creation with a real psychological pull and becomes the soul of the movie. The most awarded international film of the year, The Secret Agent. One of the best films of the year, perhaps the best. A major achievement, not just the best film of the year, but one of the best of the decade. There may be no better piece of screen acting this year other than The Secret Agent in theaters and on digital. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, February 22nd, 2026 issue of the New York Times and Leisure section. We read from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section every Sunday at 3 p.m. Your reader has been Janice Marie Hunt. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the re-airing of this morning's Buffalo News. Following that at 6 p.m. is the Buffalo News Viewpoints. Stay tuned for this reading and more throughout the day. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another